All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm so excited to be here with you guys today and be able to read with you for the first time. And I'm going to read you some of my favorite fables today. All right? I will tell you, okay? So I want you to raise your hand if you've ever been taught a lesson by your friends or family or your teacher. That should be everyone, right? Yeah. That's exactly what a fable does. A fable teaches us a lesson. So we're going to look right here. You can go ahead and put your hands down. All right. So a fable, it has a hero, a villain, and it has characters with weaknesses, okay? And the characters are animals. Okay, setting is outside, so that means we're going to be reading about the animals outside. And the most important part of the story is that it has a lesson or a moral to teach us, something important. Okay? So when we're reading the story, I want you guys to look for what it is trying to teach us. Oh, we're not going to read the whole thing, don't worry. So now that we know that these stories are fables, I want you to think in your head for a second. Do you think that this story is real or make-believe? Just think in your head for a second. Remember, what does the story have in it? Okay. So let's say out loud, is it real or make-believe?
Make-believe.
That's right, because it has animals that are talking. That doesn't happen in real life. All right. So we're going to read The Busy Ant and the Singing Grasshopper. "Why don't you stop and enjoy the sun?" the grasshopper called to the ant as she hurried past. The ant put down the large seed she was carrying and sighed. "I have too much to do," she said. "If I don't gather food for our store, my family won't have anything to eat in the winter." "Who cares about winter?" replied the grasshopper drowsily. "You should enjoy the summer while it lasts." Closing his eyes, he began to sing a lazy summer song. He sang of the butterflies fluttering by. He sang of the flowers' sweet perfume. And he sang of long summer days that seemed as though they would last forever. The next day, the day after, and the one after that, the ant worked hard while the grasshopper did nothing but sunbathe and sing. Every time the ant passed by, the grasshopper invited her to stop for a while. But every time the ant answered, "I can't stop now. I am far too busy." One day, when the summer was nearly over, the grasshopper said to the ant, "You must have enough in your store by now. You've been slaving away all summer." "Have you any idea how big my family is?" the ant replied briskly. "Besides, don't you think you ought to be putting something away for yourself? I've heard it's going to be a cold winter. You'll need more than a song to keep you warm." And with that, she hurried on her way. The grasshopper paid no attention. "Who wants to waste their life making preparations?" he said, and settled down under a dandelion to sing himself to sleep. But as the days went by, the sun began to lose its warmth. The butterflies disappeared and the leaves on the trees turned red and gold. Still, the grasshopper did nothing but sing. A chill crept in from the north, making him shiver. Ooh! Men came to harvest their crops, and before long the grasshopper found himself on an empty field, listening to the wind whistle through the stubbly stalks and howl across the sky. He was cold and hungry, and he didn't feel much like singing anymore. Thinking of all the food the ant had put away, the grasshopper decided to ask for help. So we're going to stop and think for a minute. If we think back to what I said about fables, what is the most important thing about a fable? It teaches us a moral or a lesson, okay? So I want you to think in your head for a second. Can you predict how this story is going to end if it has something to teach us? Just think for a minute. Think about what ending it could possibly have. Anything that's in your head. Okay, go ahead and raise your hand if you have any ideas. All right, go ahead, sweetheart.
It will end by the grasshopper learned its lesson and then the ant let it come in to eat some.
Really? Okay. Abdullah?
It would end with a lesson.
What kind of lesson? What do you think is going to happen? Who's going to learn what?
The grasshopper.
What's he gonna learn?
He's gonna learn in the winter that he should gather up some food before he starves.
Right,
that's important. All right, go ahead.
He should get ready like the ant so he doesn't get cold, and maybe make nice with friends.
Yeah, maybe. All right, last one, go ahead.
Maybe when they eat, he'll be hungry and he'll be like starving and have nothing to eat.
Yeah, maybe. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and continue and listen to the end of the story, okay? He hopped along the ant's well-worn path and found her little doorway in the soil. Little ant, he called. Are you at home? The ant scurried to answer the door. All her tiny daughters and sons and nieces and nephews came too. They crowded into the doorway, curious to see who their visitor was. My, you really do have a big family, exclaimed the grasshopper. I was wondering, he continued hopefully, whether you could spare me a morsel from your store, so a little bit of food. I'm cold and hungry now that winter has arrived. But what happened to your store? Asked the ant. Was it washed away in a terrible flood? Shrilled another. Or stolen by a big scary bird? Suggested a third. Well, not exactly, said the grasshopper awkwardly. I mean to say, I didn't actually make a store. But what were you doing all summer? Said the tiniest ant of all. The grasshopper blushed. Not much, he said. In fact, looking down at his feet, I was really doing nothing at all. All of the tiny ants gasped in shock. The mother ant frowned. So now you expect to come and live off my store, do you? I worked hard all summer to make my store, grasshopper, she said firmly, and I have over 1,000 mouths to feed. Wow, that's a big family. Oh dear, sighed the grasshopper. Perhaps I should have prepared for the future a little after all, instead of just sunbathing and singing all summer. He turned to leave. Wait a minute, a tiny ant piped up. Did you say you could sing? The grasshopper looked back and nodded. That's right, he said. That's one thing I can do. Oh, sing us a song, cried the tiny ant. Perhaps he can sing for his supper, suggested another. Can he, Mama? Can he? Please let him, begged all the other tiny ants. The mother ant folded out her arms and looked sternly at the grasshopper. Very well, she said, but just this once. And so all the ants settled down to listen to the grasshopper sing. It was a beautiful and haunting song. He sang of sunny days and butterflies. He sang of falling leaves and the howling wind. And he sang of the wisdom of ants who work all summer long so they have something to put in their bellies when the cold winter sets in. Okay, so let's think again. We were looking for a lesson of the story, okay? So now you're going to turn to your shoulder, neighbor, partner, and talk about what you think the moral or the lesson of the story was, okay? Go ahead.
The lesson
Salam, where's your partner? All right. High five. Let's look back up here. All right. Does anybody have any ideas of what the moral of that story was?
That the grasshopper do not seek and play and gather fruit from it.
Right? Okay, that's a good point, Clara.
Don't be lazy and be nice.
Yes. Right? In the end, what saved him? Being nice to the ants. But he was lazy all summer long. Go ahead, Salam.
So when the ant was going, he told her to stop. Yeah. So if he was like starving, he has to learn a lesson that like he built something and where you put like food, like he takes the food, he puts them inside, and then in winter he can just eat.
Right, so he needs to prepare, right? He needs to make that store. All right, last one. Go ahead.
So what the grasshopper learned is that when it's summer, don't be lazy and tell people to stop and be lazy. So But the ant is telling him, I can't give up now because she has a big family to feed, and if she stops, they will both be hungry and shivering.
Right.
So the ant is trying to tell the grasshopper, don't be lazy and prepare for winter.
Right, so maybe work as hard as your friends, right? And it'll pay off. All right, so now we're going to take what we learned about fables. We know that it has the animal characters, there's a hero, there's a villain, or somebody who has a weakness, right? The grasshopper's weakness was not preparing, right? Just sunbathing and singing. So now we're going to take what we learned. You guys are going to sit down and read this short story about the lion and the mouse, okay? It's a fable too. So you know it? Great. So it has a lesson to teach us. You're going to go through and underline where you see evidence that there's a lesson there, okay? And then just write a couple of sentences about what the lesson was. If you need help, talk to your shoulder partner, okay? All right, come grab one.